Hello, BookTube, and welcome to March, an insanely prolific time on BookTube where there are events and read-alouds and read-alongs and buddy reads and also book clubs. Aplenty in March. And this is the first day of March. Now is the time to bear down on all of those responsibilities. Throw away all the reading you were going to do yourself. Your reading is pre-claimed. There are a handful of BookTube book clubs that are on my mind. One, of course, is my own. The Steve Tiberius Donahue Book Club starts in March. We're reading a biography of Queen Elizabeth II. Uh, but there are two other book clubs that I want to talk about today, and I will move on. I will talk about others, but there are two that I want to talk about today. One is Randy Ray, the literate Texan. He has the Lone Star Book Club. The March pick today starts today with Jim Thompson's novel The Getaway. But another, of course, far bigger reach is Michael K Vaughan, who has Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, where Roger Hotep picks books for the cheapest book club on the internet, because all the books on Roger's Cheap Old Book Club are free on Project Gutenberg, a great online site that has carefully curated, out of copyright books by the tens of thousands. You can just download on your device. You can download them to your computer and send them wherever you like. You can download them to your iPad. You can download them to Kindle or Kobo. They've got you covered. And they're careful with these things to make sure they look good. Some of them even, they managed to include original pictures from the Victorian era. Amazing stuff. Just amazing. And everything in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club is on Project Gutenberg. So if you do e-reading, you can read them for free. And in March, for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, the choice is an archetypal work of fantasy fiction from 1924. So it came out into the world just in time for everybody who was going to go on to write fantasy novels in the 20th century and make it a gigantic genre to read and absorb. And that is this, The King of Elfland's Daughter, by an author who I am going to call Lord Dunsany. Okay? so you don't filling the comments, I'm not going to call this person Lord Dunsany. I'm going to call him Lord Dunsany. But that's be that as it may. This is a big fantasy novel about a human who goes to Elfland, which is not just a place, it's also a time. In terms of time space, it's a magical realm in a way that Dunsany imagines, not that you go there and then you come back, but that it itself is magical. The most obvious way to see that being that time passes differently there than in our human world. A mortal man goes to Elfland and brings back the daughter of the king of Elfland, who is really, really pretty. He falls in love with her, and they have a child who grows up to be a great hunter named Orion. The mother is really, really pretty. She's just like incredibly pretty. If that's sounding familiar to you, a later fantasy author who ate this thing up, whether he admitted it or not, would later write a story called Baron and Luthien, in which the main female character, Luthien, is really, really pretty and has no other characteristics at all. The story moves on from there, but I want to stress with the King of Elfland's Daughter, especially for those of you who've never read it, there isn't much of a story. It's much more atmosphere than story. Those things happen, and you come to know Orion and not necessarily like him because he's busy hunting unicorns and killing them just for sport. They're not dangerous. They don't shoot lasers out of their horns, as we all know real unicorns do. Instead, he just kills them in a kind of, the beasts of Orome from the Silmarillion or whatnot. But you're not going to sympathize with that. You're not going to sympathize with the human who goes and marries the King of Elfland's daughter. You're not going to sympathize with the daughter of the King of Elfland. You're not going to sympathize with the King of Elfland. You're not. I don't know. As I was rereading this, just like with The Getaway by Jim Thompson, I was wondering what readers of modern day fantasy are going to make of this at all. I think probably a lot of those readers, there's a troll who's a main character in this book. I think most of those modern readers will find that troll the best toehold that they have in the book, which is weird because when this came out and when it was reprinted in the middle of the 20th century, that was not true. You were supposed to not identify, but care about any character before you did the troll, the main troll in this book. I wonder where those chips will fall now in terms of readers. And I wonder, of course, the readers who come to this book now in 2025, unlike the readers who came to it a century ago, will be readers of fantasy. There weren't any readers of fantasy when this came out originally. This was, an old friend of mine used to say, Lord Dunsany didn't write great fantasy because he was too busy creating fantasy as a genre to do so. She meant novels, and I agree completely. I don't know that this is an effective novel. It is beautifully written, beautifully so, in a way that very few later writers can touch. Evangeline Walton can do it. Tolkien at his best can do it. There are passages in The Lord of the Rings, in the House of Tom Bombadil, for instance, that can match some of the prose here, but it's amazing all throughout. That's the thing that I think will strike fantasy readers reading this for the first time most strongly, is how beautifully written this is. They'll go looking for other things. They'll go looking for identifiable characters, for something more rigid in the way of a plot, and they won't find them. Not much. Not much. I think there's a reason for that. I was rereading, I don't know how many times I've read The King of Elfland's Daughter. I lost track. But I was rereading it for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, and I was thinking more and more that one of the main reasons why I don't think this ultimately works as a book, I hate to say that, because it's a fundamental fantasy novel, and it is great. It is great. It doesn't quite work on a mechanical level, and I think one of the reasons for that is because Lord Dunsany is much better at writing short stories than he is at writing novels. None of his novels are really all that good. And almost all of his short stories are, and some of his short stories are towering masterpieces. They're just incredible masterpieces of fantasy. Unlike fantasy authors of today, most of whom will work forever, tabletop gaming style, in creating their imaginary worlds, and then they'll live inside those worlds and expand on those worlds, and you'll get every blade of grass, and you'll get every kingdom and every sub-kingdom. Dunsany made worlds and then discarded them. He made them feel real, and then he got rid of them in order for the next story to appear in some other world. And that suits short stories better than it does novels. The world of The King of Elfland's Daughter doesn't bear so prolonged a visit. It would have been much more effective as a short story, than as a novel, I think. So when you're reading this book, you may be enraptured. You might like it a lot more. This time around, I was noticing a lot more of its shortcomings. I admit you can probably get that impression from this video. I still love it, but I was noticing more of its shortcomings this time around, and thinking all the while that I was reading it about how great the short stories are. So I want to use this. I don't know what kind of videos Mike's going to make about this book, but I wanted to use this video as an opportunity not only to ask you what you're making of this if you're reading it for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, but also to urge you to read Lord Dunsany's short stories, all of which are free on Project Gutenberg. You don't have to wait until you find a nice big anthology, although a nice big lovely illustrated anthology with deckled edges and French flaps, nice floppy background, 1,000 pages, would be really nice. It would be really nice if a publisher would do that. That would be really nice. I want to recommend, there's a short story called How Knuth Would Have Practiced His Art Upon the Knolls. That's the title of the short story, at Knuth, N-U-T-H. It's incredible. It's just incredible. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. When you read it, you will see how incredible it is, and you will have a new high water mark for fantasy short stories that almost nothing can meet. Tolkien couldn't write Lord Dunsany's short stories to save his life. Couldn't possibly have done it. It's just a different kind of writing temperament for different authors. Some authors are not cut out for writing novels. But Lord Dunsany is famous for The Hoard of the Ghibellines, another story that is often anthologized and that deserves it. It is absolutely incredible. You will love it. The Hoard of the Ghibellines you will love. And my favorite thing that he wrote of any kind, novel or play or poem or anything, is The Kith of the Elfkin. The Kith of the Elf Folk is the name of the story. The Kith of the Elf Folk. Which is amazing. Amazingly winsome. It strikes all of the emotional notes of The King of Elfland's Daughter. The wistfulness, the weird twilight flickering of the fantasy world that lives right alongside our own and is often not appreciated by our own, coarsened by our own. The Kith of the Elf Folk captures that perfectly. And all I could think when I was rereading this book for the book club was how horrible the Kith of the Elf Folk would be if Dunsany had decided to make it a book, a whole novel, how horrible it would be. It's perfect, gem-like perfection the way it is. I urge you to find those three at any the title of the first one is How Nuth, N-U-T-H, would have practiced his art upon the knolls, G-N-O-L-E-S. But the Kith of the Elf Folk, it will break your heart and make you smile. You will love it. And it would not work at a longer page count, I don't think. So I wanted to take this video not only to ask you how you're getting along with this book for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, but also to urge you to read Lord Dunsany's short stories, especially if this book is not appealing to you. I don't know what's going on with the character of Orion. I have no idea. How Dunsany could have thought there was anything attractive in the character, I have no idea. I don't know what's going on with the pacing in the second half of this book. You might, if you've never read this author, you might encounter those things and think, okay, well, he's not for me. I get that it's beautifully written. I can see how it carries over into later works of fantasy that I do like, but the guy himself is not for me. Please don't come to that conclusion until you've read some short stories, is all I'm saying. The short stories, I think, will convince you that that was his natural métier. But anyway, that's Roger's Cheap Old Book Club for March, The King of Elfland's Daughter. So just a little, I'll leave a link to Mike's Snouse's video down below, and I'll wrap this up for now. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.